Okay, we are all set. Thank you so much for being here and doing this with me. I really appreciate it. This is my dear friend and fabulous writer, John Dufresne, and I wanted him to take just a second to introduce himself to you and tell you a little bit about himself.
Yeah, my name's John Dufresne. As Michael said, I teach creative writing at Florida International University in Miami, and I've been here since 1989. And before that, I taught in Georgia, New York, and Louisiana. I write fiction primarily. These days, it seems I write novels more than short stories because that's what my editor wants me to say. So, and it's fun actually. So. I write fiction and novels and short stories, and that's what I teach as well. So I'm always sort of thinking about stories, how they work, what makes them work, and where they fall apart. And every time when I'm teaching, I'm also learning myself about what makes my stories work or not work as well. Because we're all kind of apprentices in a craft where no one gets to be a master. You just keep trying to get better at it, and it's fun. That's why we do it, because it's difficult.
Yes.
If it were easy, everyone would do it. And,
right.
We wouldn't bother. So that's kind of it. I'm working on a couple of novels right now, and school's just started up, so it's getting busy reading a lot of student manuscripts as well.
Tell us when your first book came out, what it was called, and a little bit about your publications over the years.
Yeah, the first book was called The Way That Water Under Stone. It was a collection of short stories. Let's see, I'm trying to think of where I was. I think I got an agent when I was a graduate student, actually in Binghamton, New York. I was a TA there teaching and going for PhD, I dropped out of that program because I wanted to write more than I wanted to be a scholar. So we stayed 1 year there. We had a kid, so we also had to make some money. But the book was taken by an editor, and when I was living in Georgia, in Augusta, Georgia, it was taken by Norton, by editor named Jill Bialowski, who was actually an assistant editor at the time. And I believe I was her first writer, and now she's still there. She's still my editor. So she took The Way That Water Under Stone and then asked me to write a novel, and I wrote Louisiana Power and Light. And that's how I learned to write novels, was by writing one. I didn't know how to do it before because I had only written short stories. So I did that, and followed that up with another novel, Love Warps the Mind a Little. And I think maybe after that, I wrote another collection. I think I wrote another novel, Deep in the Shade of Paradise. Collection of stories called, what was it? Johnny Too Bad, Requiem Mass, a novel. Last novel was No Regrets Coyote, and I've written two books also about the writing process, writing fiction. One called The Lie That Tells the Truth, and the second one more specifically about the novel writing. Called Is Life Like This? So I'm actually working on another writing book. I just sent in one novel to my editor. I'm waiting for her notes, and I started on another one while I'm waiting. That's what you learn when you're in the business long enough. You just got to keep writing.
Yes.
You get it out of the house. Someone will read it, give you some feedback. In the meantime, start the next one because we're writing against the clock. So
exactly,
you got to keep at it.
So you, throughout your entire publishing career, have had the same editor and publisher.
Yes, I have. Jill's now the vice president actually at Norton, I had the same agent actually the whole time, but he's kind of retiring, and so I got a new agent. I've got like sort of two agents now because it's making a transition. But so I've been very fortunate. I don't think that happens to a lot of people.
That's very rare.
Got lucky. Norton's a good house. It's owned by the people who work there, so it's not going to be bought up by a conglomerate or anything like that. So it has a certain amount. It has an investment in the writers, which is good. They're not so much interested in one book as a writer's career, which is good for someone like me.
That's extremely rare, and that's amazing. John is one of my favorite writers, and his book on writing, I guess I wasn't even aware that you had a second one. I'm going to have to get that at ASAP. It's out. Is this how life is? What's the title?
Is Life Like This?
Is Life Like
A
This?
Guide to Writing Your First Novel in 6 Months, which is a bit of a lie itself. It was supposed to be a guide to writing the first draft of your novel in a month, but my editor didn't think that was sexy enough for a subtitle,
Right.
so I changed it. So then the prologue explains it's really not your novel; it's a first draft in 6 months, which is even that for me is almost like impossible to do. But
Yeah.
I set out a plan where maybe that can happen, because everything, and I know we're going to talk about revision a bit, but everything important in writing happens when you're revising it. That's when all the good lines come, and that's when you refine it. That's when the writing becomes good.
Right.
You have to write that difficult first draft to start with,
right.
So you have something to revise.
But to me, you are one of the. It's rare, I think, that someone can write as well as you do and teach as well as you do. It seems like a lot of times people really, sort of excel at one or the other. But I think you're an extraordinary teacher and an extraordinary writer, and your students are very fortunate. I've always enjoyed the sessions that I've been in with you, and like I say, your book, The Lie That Tells the Truth, is that after you scratched out all the different, isn't that the final title, the Lie That Tells the Truth?
The artist did that. I kind of stole the title a bit up. It's a paraphrase from something that Picasso said about art being the lie that tells the truth, and so I just stole that from him. But it is. I mean, that's what fiction is like, making something up, but making it. The facts are made up, but the truth, the emotional truth, is there. That's
right.
Right.
Well, it is one of my all-time favorite writing books, and one I go back to over and over and over again.
Oh, great! Thank you.
So, why don't we talk a little bit about your process? It sounds like the entire time that you've been writing, at least for publication, but maybe writing in general, especially novels, you've been teaching as well. So how do you juggle your schedule? What is your process? Do you have a certain routine? What works for you, and what do you recommend for others?
Well, I think the important thing is to write every day. And sometimes it's only 5 minutes. Sometimes these days they just get away from you and you've got a lot to do. But if you stay there, if you take a day off, then you need to write. You need to write a day just to get back to where you were, I think. So for every day you take off, you figure, I got to write my way back to where I was. So I don't want that to happen. I don't want to waste time. So if you write even for 5 minutes a day, and you're thinking about writing for the other 23 hours and 55 minutes, it's on your mind. You're collecting information. You're looking at the world. You're looking for characters. You're looking for settings, all that kind of stuff. It just keeps you, because that's when a lot of the writing goes on. It's not always when you're sitting at your desk. I carry a notebook around, and actually I use my phone as well now. I can do that, and I take photographs of places that I think might make interesting settings. I write notes down. I draw pictures of places that that I want to remember, and then so that keeps me thinking about writing when I'm away from the desk, so I write every day. And the good thing about teaching is I can make my own schedule, and so I usually don't teach until late afternoon or evening, and so I have the days mostly. I mean, I do have to do a lot of schoolwork, but I have time every day during the day to write, and I'd rather write the earlier the better for me. I function better when I'm sort of fresh, so I write in the morning, and if I don't have a lot to do, I'll keep writing through the afternoon. And sometimes I'm working on different projects, and so if I feel like, I just want to take a break today from that novel, I'll work on a story that I started, because I save everything, and I have them in manila folders, and I look in and say, oh, there's a story, let me work on that today for a little while, make a little bit of progress. Because when you're writing a novel, that has to be the big priority, and everything else sort of comes in after that. So, but I like to do that and work on some essays maybe about writing, and some poems sometimes, just to sort of cleanse the palate, I guess. Get a little change. And I love to read, so I'm always reading. I think as a writer, you have to read all the time. And as a fiction writer, as much as I love fiction, I probably these days read more nonfiction. Because it's like the world, you got to know about what's out there and what's going on. And if your character is a poker player or a dentist, you have to know everything about that world or enough about that world to be convincing. And anyway, I found it interesting. And you always find metaphors in nonfiction too. I read a lot about physics, not because I understand math or physics at all, because it makes me think in a different way.
Right.
And I like that kind of being rattled a bit. So I'll read about that. I read about neuroscience. I read, all that sort of goes into writing the fiction, helps me write fiction.
Do you ever avoid reading certain writers when you're writing fiction because of their style, because of their influence on you?
No, because I try to read good literature, and so if I'm influenced by anyone that I admire, I think that's a good thing,
right.
Not a bad thing. I would be happy if anybody said, "Boy, that book was reminding me a lot of Faulkner." I'd say, "Damn, that's great."
Right.
And I think I learn by imitating, and that's how I learned to write. When I was trying to become a fiction writer, I would just try to write like Faulkner, and then I would try to write like Hemingway, and then sometimes I would even write their stories out. Longhand, I would just sit there and write the story out, and just to see why they stopped the sentence here, how they got somebody across the room, all those things that you need to pay attention to. And I would take a story by, say, Alice Munro, make up my own characters, and then try to write a story in which every time she made a move or made a shift of point of view, I would do it, all that stuff. And I knew the story wasn't going anywhere, but it was helping me write stories. That would get tossed away, but I learned something about writing by doing it. So it's a long apprenticeship, You just keep trying to get better at it. And,
yeah, I was going to come back to that same word, apprenticeship, and that's one of the great ways to do it. Outline a novel, break it down, see what works. And I think especially those that speak to you, influence you, because there's something there that's resonating with you, and so that's going to be directly related to what you're going to create.
It's like, why this writer made me love these characters? How did she do it?
Right.
I got to go back and figure out, and then I want to be able to do that too. So I want to learn how to make that. And some of it, you're learning narrative techniques, just like how to do simple things, which aren't so simple, you find out. And also, how to bring characters to life, which I think is the heart of fiction, is the people who live in the stories.
Excellent. I want to go on to talk about revision, but before we do that, where can people who see this find you? You have a website? What's the...
Yeah, www.johndufresne.com.
Okay.
That's it.
And then I know you do a lot of workshops around the country. Are they listed on your website, ones that are coming up?
They should be. Sometimes I'm not always up to date. I think, I know I'm doing one soon up at the Heritage Festival up in St. Augustine, the Florida Heritage Book Festival soon. And then I'm actually going to be up your way in Seaside doing a small workshop in October the 6th that weekend, a small short story workshop, and I forget what, a couple of university things coming up, but I do try to put them on the website. So
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I do one down here if anybody from Miami is around or South Florida is around. I do one usually every other Friday night here at FIU. It's open to the community. We have about 35 people now coming. It's been going on for 25 years.
Wow.
And it's open to anybody, any genre. And it's a really nice group, and it's a little more relaxing than a classroom. It's not quite so much tension on there. And it's kind of fun to get together. So anybody who wants to can come.
Excellent. Okay, so revision. Will you tell us? You mentioned earlier how the real writing is rewriting,
right.
And the most nuanced things happen in revision and rewriting. You can't really tell what you have until that first draft is done, and then a lot of real work begins. I mean, the real work begins. But will you tell us? Do you have a certain approach? What do you recommend for the act of revision? For instance, I always, when I complete a draft, I put the work away for a while and try to come back to it as a reader, as an editor, different part of the brain, different approach than as the writer, and to give some space, distance between the, but what do you do?
Well, actually, that's great advice. I try to do the same thing. In fact, I mentioned that I sent my last manuscript into my editor, and it was probably now 2 months ago. I haven't looked at it since then, and I won't look at it until I get some notes back from her or some kind of response. So then when I go back at it, it's like, it's easier to see what worked and what doesn't work, and you're not so much married to certain sentences that you love. Now you think, well, it's not working, I got to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And you see it with fresh eyes. You see it more like a reader than you do as a writer, because you've forgotten some of it, in fact.
Right.
So I try to do that. I try to, what people need to understand, what young writers need to understand, beginning writers need to understand, is that revision isn't a matter of choice. It's not like I can not revision. No.
Right.
It's the essential element, and you have to do it. So don't resist it. Just say, now I've got a beginning and a middle and an end. And now I have the opportunity to make it better, to do justice to the lives of the characters in the story. I tend to, even though I don't recommend this as the best method, I always tell my students, get black on white as fast as you can. Just get anything down there from beginning to end and do it. But I can't do that. But I end up like revising as I go on from word to word and sentence to sentence. And I write things, like over and over. This morning I was trying to write this little scene, and I had started it yesterday, and I wrote it 3 or 4 different times, and it got longer at one point, then it got shorter again, and then I think maybe I got it to the point. Tomorrow I'll read it over and see if it's working. And really, that's what I got done today, and it set up something else that I know I'm going to write. So I did all that. I kept revising, and I make it the best, as good as I can make it now, knowing that that's all going to change later on. It doesn't make any difference. It's got to be good. I gotta like it to move on. But I also know when I get to the end, everything changes, because now I know where I went,
right,
and where it headed. And I need to put some things in that I left out, and some things didn't resonate, so I can get rid of that stuff and all of that. So, and then you reread it with the pen in your hand, and you also are like. This is like the first act of revision, is reading it and with a pen in your hand, making notes and asking questions and trying to open it up, not trying to edit it down. I'm trying to just open it up. What opportunities did I give myself that I didn't take advantage of, and so forth. Some little note, you just make notes about the characters and what might happen later on, and then you read something that you thought, well, I thought that was pretty good, but it's not, so just cross that out. I'll take this out because it's slowing things down or whatever. And go at it, and then just keep going at it over and over and over again. And for me, sometimes it's I think at the end, why don't you just send it off? It's almost like you don't want to let it go.
Right.
One more time, it would even be better. And in fact, it always gets better. Every time you go through it gets better. But I think two good pieces of advice that every writer would have to do with revision is you need to learn to finish the story. Finish it, because if you don't finish it, you'll never learn how to write. You got to get to the end. You can't. We all have this. Every time we write something, we lose at some point in it. We lose confidence in our ability to finish it, or we say the characters aren't breathing the way I thought they should. They're not as interesting, whatever. And we say, and then we get this idea for a better story. We put this one away, and we start the next one. We're all excited about it. We get halfway through that, the same thing happens again. So learn to finish, but don't think you're going to finish this week, this month, or maybe this year. Just do it. Just keep at it and do it. So it's like the revision is really like what the word says, is seeing it again. You're just looking at it, and this time with a critical eye, where you try to keep the critic sort of a little bit out of the picture when you're creating and composing something. Now you're looking at it with a critical eye, the eye that you read books with, which of course you're enjoying it, you're letting it happen, but you're also noticing things, and we all don't want to, we have a hard time getting rid of these things we like, but you make a note, put a check mark beside it, or a question mark beside it, and the third time you go through it, it'll be gone. You might as well take it out now, but you don't. And so there's like 1,000 steps in this. You start noticing characters behaving inconsistently, or the plot is sputtering at certain times, or the dialogue seems to ramble, or the verbs aren't strong. Sometimes there are revisions when you're just getting the words right. You're just going through, like I will, if I go through the manuscript, I will circle it's usually verbs, but it can be nouns or something that like, that's not quite right. I don't know what it is yet, and I don't know. I won't be able to find out today. But one day I'm going to get this right, and I'm not going to let it go until that happens. And so you're addressing themes, and did you leak? Were there some obligatory scenes that you didn't write, or as the pro? You know, if you read it, if you can read out loud, listen to yourself. I would say do that, because if you stumble over words or a sentence, you can be sure that the reader will. So you need to smooth it out, or you need to get rid of it. So you sort of go at it, if you can, with being calm and confident. I will get through this. I will work through it. It's not all going to happen today. This takes a long time. This takes longer, sometimes, often, than the composition of it, than getting from the beginning to the end. Now the real work begins. And it's not easy. It's not just refining. The last thing you worry about, maybe, is that editing, where I'm getting the commas in the right place and all of that. And that's important, and you need to get it right, but worry about it when you think, okay, it's all in shape now. Now let me see if I follow the conventions. And if I didn't follow them, it's because I didn't want to follow them, not because I made a mistake.
Right.
So just a little bit at a time. Sometimes you say, I'm just going to read through this. I'm just going to read all the dialogue in here and see if it sounds like it. I'm going to read it to see if this character is consistent. I'm going to make the first lines of every chapter like music. I'm just going to work on first lines. And it's like, and just like that, you just kind of let it happen, and you pay attention to it. It's like having a conversation with the manuscript. You're reading it, and you're talking to it, you're listening to what it has to say, and you're responding. So that's and then it becomes fun. And as I said, sometimes you don't want to stop. But it's where you become really deeply engaged, and you get to know your characters so much better than you thought you did. And because you know it better, you say, "Oh, he wouldn't have done that in chapter 2. Now that I know what he's like and whatever." So you need to go back and change it, all that stuff. So you're doing all this examining and reorganizing, beginnings, middles, ends, and all that stuff. You're shaping things, you're deleting things, and then, as you said, when you get all that, you think, okay, I think I've got it. Then what you said, put it away. Put it away for a week, 2 weeks, as long as you can. And then take it out and read it again. And I guarantee, put the pen in your hand, because you'll be crossing things out on the first page that you thought it was perfect. There was nothing ever better written in this. You go, oh, geez, how did I let that go? Blah, blah, blah. But you'll feel good about it. At that point, you're almost there. This is just like you're polishing it at that point. So, you're asking yourself the questions in revision, like, do I know what my central character wants? Do I know why she wants it? Do I know what's the obstacles in her way? Is it clear to the reader what the struggle is? Have I shown it, not told it? Is every scene here essential? Is there any I can give? Any characters not pulling them? All of that stuff. You just keep going on, and you can't think of it all at once. It all comes to me. Oh, all right, okay. So, am I enjoying it? Am I enjoying reading it? And I do. I mean, it's like going back and reading it for the 20th time. It's like, if you're doing it right, it's still fun to read it. It's like you're still excited about it, and say, well, now it's coming in, it's coming into shape. So.
Excellent. I was just thinking, as you were talking about reading it the 20th time and it's still responding to it, and one of the biggest tests for me on the quality of something is if I've adapted a novel into a play, and at rehearsals I hear it over and over and over and over for months in preparation for the performance. Then I get to really say, okay, what did I get right? What needs what needs work? And talk to me about everything you're saying. Sounds to me like one of the central key ingredients for a novelist, anybody doing long form quality work, is patience.
Oh yeah. You got to be patient and tenacious. You got to persevere. You got to it's not going to all happen. I mean, it really is. I like to tell my students, you're in this class because you're a good writer. That's a given. You're a good writer, but you may not know how to tell a story. Telling a story is harder than writing, and you have to do both, and you have to figure that out. And in order to do that, you have to bring patience. Writing, patience is genius in a way. It's like Einstein said, it's not that I'm smarter than anyone else, it's that I stay with problems longer and didn't let go until we figured it out. And that's what we do. Just like Chekhov said, you should write like you're eating blinis, just like serenely, like everything's easy. Don't worry. Don't try to figure everything out at once. Just sit there. You'll figure it out later. You'll make some progress today. And so it's just the willingness too to sit there. And you have to say, I'm choosing to work over choosing these distractions. I'm choosing to work and get this right. Because writers like to write. And some people like to have written. They want to be at the bookstore signing the book without doing the work. Writers, when the book's done, we're already thinking that one, like that baby's gone, he's off, and we're thinking about the next one, and the next one becomes important. And we don't, unless somebody asks us to read from the book or something like that, we don't go back to it. And some days you go, oh, I wonder what my characters are doing, and then what you do is you write another book,
right,
in a minute to find out what they're doing. So. And you go through, and I I have this little checklist of things that I tell my students. And when you're revising, if you're writing a novel, or I say get rid of the first chapter and get rid of the last chapter. If it's a story, you can say the first paragraph and the last paragraph. Just because sometimes we introduce it rather than start it, and then at the end we're not sure they got it, so we tell them.
Right.
Kind of thing. And all your adverbs, make sure they're absolutely necessary, and that it's not a better verb you need rather than an adverb and a verb, and adjectives. Make sure make sure it's doing some work, and it's not the cliche, the wily fox or whatever it is that you said something. You've used what Ford Maddox Ford said, that he considered style the fresh, usual word, one after the other till the end. So it's the word that everyone else uses, but you used it in a different way that no one ever saw before. And that's kind of what you're working for. When I say get rid of all your adverbs and adjectives, when you get one right, there's nothing better than getting the right adverb or the right adjective in there. But it's got to be the right one. And don't settle for those others. And so, and you learn about what your own strengths and weaknesses are, so that when you're revising, you say, I'm really good at dialogue. Well, one thing is I'll put a lot of dialogue in my book, but I have problems with, let's say, description. So you work harder at that, and you look at that when you go back. Maybe you have some pet words. We all have that we overuse. Mine are the word that, because with noun clauses you can get rid of it most of the time. So why not get rid of it? And what else? Very is one I overuse. Just is one I overuse. And we probably all have some like that. So when you know what they are, you can do a global search and say, let me get rid of half of these. I don't need all these. Because when you're writing it, you're not paying attention. And when I write dialogue, sometimes I'm just writing it because I'm hearing it, I'm listening to it, and I'm trying to write it as fast as I can. And when I go back and revise it, I realize, well, that's what I heard them say, but I don't need all this, because dialogue is not really the way we talk.
Right.
It's talk that's distilled. So I get rid of the yeses, the nos, and the repetitions and the ums and the ahs. It's what I heard when I wrote the first draft. But in a revision, I get to make it better, and make it sharper, and go through. So all of that stuff, get the cliches and the dialogue tags that you don't need, and the passive voice verbs, all of those things that you learn. You learn all this stuff as you write. The best way to learn how to write is to write, and to read. Those are the two things. You can't do too much of either of those things. And you have to read like a writer reads, which means sometimes you have to read it twice. If you like it, I say don't read. If you didn't like it, don't bother. But although you can learn from things you don't like.
Right.
But if you like something, say, wow, how did that happen? Now I'm going to read it, and I'm going to see how the writer engineered this emotional response that I had to it. So, because I want to be able to do that. I want to take someone out of their world, all of that stuff. So, and it just goes on and on and on. And it's, but it's the best part of writing, Not to tell you, I love making people up, and I love, making up a town or whatever. I love all of that stuff. It's really a high. It's very exciting. But the best writing happens later.
Right.
So that's the other bit.
What about, finally, would you talk just a little bit about perfectionism when it comes to revision and maybe fear and not letting go of something?
Yeah, it's one of my students said, better done than perfect. I said, yes, that's right, and I'm going to quote you for the rest of my life. Better done than perfect. Samuel Beckett, our Nobel laureate, said, ever tried, ever failed, never mind, try again, fail again, fail better. All we can do is fail better. All art is a failure. It's never going to be perfect. Forget the idea of perfection. Forget that word, I should be able to do this. That word should is the verb of the oppressor, right? Whoever yours is, yourself, your dad, or whoever you hear that voice. You should do this. No, you do whatever. You just go and do the work. You're not going to get it perfect, and eventually let it go. Send it out into the world, and you'll know soon enough. Because some editors will tell you what they think about it. It's working out, it's not. It needs more work, or it doesn't. And I would also say to people, because in some ways publishing is becoming more democratic. In other ways, it's getting more difficult because there are fewer and fewer big publishers. Because something is not accepted does not mean it's not good. It means for any number. I've been an editor, and sometimes you can't take a story because you had one like it in the last issue, or you don't have enough room in this issue, or all kinds of things. It's not because it's bad. So don't lose faith in your. Part of your job as a writer is to say, now I did this, and I want everyone to know my darlings. I want everyone to know these people. And part of your job is I'm going to make sure that they do. I'm going to work at doing it. So you owe it to your characters, to do that. And have faith in yourself that it's nice to be validated. And I think if something's good, it will get published. It may not get published when you want it to and where you want it to, but it'll get there. And we all have to, we all start by publishing in small, well, I did anyway. Most people I know, small magazines, online magazines, print magazines. That's where you start. You start building up. People start noticing you. Agents read those magazines. They're looking for stories. They're looking for writers, and so do editors. And so, I started out by saying, my editor wants me to write novels because, according to the industry, it's what sells more than short stories. And I believe them. They know what they're doing. I don't. But when you're on your own, if you write short stories, you have an easier chance of breaking in because you don't need an agent for that. You just send them out, and build it up. And, that's how I did it. And I had enough stories for a book, and I found an agent, and that's how it started. Yes. I think it was easier in those days to publish stories than it is now, and that's unfortunate. And it'll come around again. But in the meantime, right now, I guess, what we're hearing from publishers.
Do you have a trusted or a group of trusted readers that you use prior to sending it to your agent? Or have you at any point in your career?
No, sometimes I'll show. I almost never show anybody the whole thing, but if I have something I have a question about, I might show it to Cindy, my wife, or to one or two friends I have who like the same books I do, so I know they'll know what I'm trying to do and see if it works. But usually, I just sort of trust myself to do it, and then, of course, my editor will tell me what you think, and we'll go from there.
It occurs to me that in your writing classes, I would imagine that the students are giving feedback to other students on their work. They're not just getting feedback from you.
Right.
So sticking with this, the issue of feedback and trusted, what would you say the quality of the feedback most are getting is from other writers, from other students, from?
I think it depends. If you're in a workshop, like in a classroom, and not say in a writers group or something, but in a classroom where it's a smaller group and we're all aware of them, I make them, write their responses. You can write on the manuscript, but also write a response, type up a response that I look at, that the author looks at as well. So everybody, you get feedback from 12 other people, whatever, all generous readers. And I also talk about the need to be specific, not just to make comments, but to general statements don't do the writer any good. The writer's got nothing to do with it, but to say specifically, I thought your character's behavior was inconsistent because he loved his mother all these first 7 pages, and then he didn't call her when she was sick, and I didn't understand why. And the writer says, "Oh, all right, I got to deal with that." The writer in his head knew why, but it didn't make it to the page. And so that kind of thing. So that, and try to be honest, generous, specific, and to tell the truth as you see it. You just say, "This is what was on my mind when I was reading your story. These are the questions that were going through my head, and these are the thoughts I had." And that's all you can have. And I also say that sometimes when we're doing this, we're trying to help the writer make it the best story it can be. So we sometimes focus on the weaknesses, and we forget to say what's working.
Right.
And so I say, because we all work from our strengths, let's make sure this writer knows that she is fabulous at dialogue, and that we might think she knows that, but she might not. So to try to do it that way, and if you have some prescriptive remarks to make, like, what if you try this in third person rather than first person, and then blah blah blah. You can do that. You can make prescriptive comments, but do it humbly. It's your story. But if I had this, maybe I would get rid of that extra brother. He really doesn't do anything in the story, or something like that. So I want them to be to react, but also to be descriptive in your feedback, and on occasion prescriptive. That's really all you can ask, I think. And and I find it's pretty good. It's good. When you get a big group like that Friday night group, and then when you get 35 people, well, some of it's going to be better, and you're going to find out yourself who in this group is a good reader of my material. And because if I read somebody's material well, I may not be as astute as somebody else's, but you listen to the people that that are making sense to you. And I tell the writer when you're listening to feedback, I always say, hold a pen in your hand and take notes, because that'll keep you from leaping across the table and stopping. So it'll keep you listening. It'll make you listen and writing it down. And you can only, let's see, not everything is going to make sense to you. Forget about what doesn't make sense. You can't do anything with it. Only the things that make sense. Yes, I understand that. Can you work with? Forget about the rest. And in a month, you may say, "Oh, now I know what he was talking about. Yeah, now I can." But right then, don't worry about it, and there will be contradictory statements. Somebody thought the ending was the best ending they ever saw. They also was confused. Well, it's up to you now as the writer. It's up to you to decide, what's going on. If a lot of people say they were confused, you better take that to heart. I mean, it's probably you did something wrong at that particular point, or something you need to address, but the important relationship is between you and the work that you submitted, not between you and anyone else. So do that, and also encourage people to follow up. If you're the guy who's up for workshop that night, you're going to feel beaten up. But even if it was nice, you're going to feel all wired. It's like, take them out for a drink or a coffee. Talk about and because I forget, when I was sitting there, what a wreck I was. Sometimes it seems like, oh, it's no big. We're not talking about you. We're talking about this story. We love you. Have trouble with the story, but sometimes it's hard to remember that.
Right. Thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you doing this, and
I wish I were up there with you guys.
Yeah, me too. But I sure, again, want to say how much I appreciate you as a writer and a teacher. And one more time, tell everybody where they can find you online.
John, www.johndufresne.com.
Okay. Thanks so much, man. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.